I'm about to go live on TikTok. Come ask all your smart home and automation questions. We're gonna hang out, talk tech, 3D printing. I don't know, we'll see what happens. Look at this little setup I got here. I got my new fancy mic. We'll see how that sounds. I got my fancy webcam that follows me around. I got all this tech to talk about. I don't know, should be fun. I don't really know what I'm doing with the whole live thing, so bear with me here, but come hang out and ask your questions. I would love to see you there. I love this question so much. Here's everything you need to know about 3D printing as a total beginner, whether you're just curious, want to get into the hobby yourself, or want to support a loved one in it. So first off, let's talk about how a 3D printer works. A 3D printer is pretty much a fancy plastic melting machine. It has this tip here that's able to melt plastic at a really high temperature, and it's able to move in all directions. So it can move left and right, it can move up and down, and then it can move forward and back. And under this fan and all the electronics, there's a metal nozzle you could see under here where all the plastic comes out of. The plastic is called filament, and it comes in these big rolls, and it looks something like this. You can think of this like your printer ink. This is the actual material that turns into the objects that you're printing out. And just like printer ink, you could get it in pretty much any color you want to suit the object that you want to print out. One thing that overwhelms a lot of beginners are all the different types of plastic. There's lots of different materials, some that are stretchy, some that are bendy, some that are really hard. As a beginner, the only material you want to look at is called PLA. This is by far the most common type of material. It's usually the most affordable, and it is the easiest to work with. The only plastic and material you want to buy for your printer is going to be PLA plastic. The plastic feeds from the spool of plastic all the way down into your printer where it gets melted out. Now, the way that the printer actually creates an object out of nothing is it does it in layers. It prints it in layers from the ground up, usually about 0.2 millimeters high. If we wanted to print a simple shape like this cylinder, for example, it would effectively print a bunch of circles consecutively stacked on top of each other until it prints out the cylinder. What I'm going to do here is print a little cylinder on top of another cylinder here so you could see how that whole process actually works. So we've got a print queued up here, and we'll see if we look down to the print nozzle there, you can see it slowly moving around in the pattern of the thing that I'm printing. You can see it's moving left and right and slowly laying down layers of plastic. Here's another progress update before we get to the end. You'll see here it's just layering more and more plastic on top of each other. And 15 minutes later, this is the end product. You'll see here we can pull it right off the print bed and we have a real 3D object. Now that's how the printer mechanically works. Now let's go to the computer and look at how we take a file on the computer and send it to the printer. So we're going to go to this website called Thingiverse. This is basically Google for 3D printable objects. It's pretty incredible. You can search anything you want in the search bar and find a file to download that you're going to be able to print on your printer. I found this little boat that I like a lot, so I'm just going to click download all files and download it to my computer. Now the problem is this file is just a 3D file. It's pretty much like an image. We need to convert it into a language that our 3D printer can understand. What we need for that is a software called the Slicer. This might look intimidating, but trust me, it's simple. I'll walk you through it. All a slicer does is converts a 3D file into a language that your printer can understand. They're very easy to use these days. You just need to enter your 3D printer's make and model while you're setting it up, and then you'll be all ready to go. Look how simple this is to use. We have the file of the boat that we downloaded from the internet. If I drag and drop it over to the slicer here, it's going to load for a second, and it just shows up. I can click and drag around to look at it in 3D space, or I could even drag it to make it smaller or bigger. It's just like MS Paint, but in 3D. There's a bunch of custom settings in this software. You can, for example, change the type of plastic that you're using, but we're going to be using PLA because, like I said, that's the best one to use as a beginner. You shouldn't touch anything else. And then there's a few other things custom, but we're not going to touch those. All we do is we click slice at the bottom here, and this is going to convert the file into something our 3D printer can understand, and then we're just going to save it and download it. We're then going to drag and drop that file we downloaded onto a regular micro SD card. That SD card then slots into our 3D printer. And then on our 3D printer, we go onto the menus, we go into the files, and we just select the file to print, and that's it. The printer's then going to heat up to melt the plastic, and then it's just going to start printing. It's really that simple. And then just like that, we have a teeny weeny little boat right off the printer. It's kind of cute. So that's how it all works. It's pretty straightforward, but there are two things you absolutely need to know before you get started. The first one is the root cause of literally 95% of people's 3D printing problems, and that's something called bed leveling. So this piece where all the prints get started off on is called the print bed, and it's crucially important that this thing is level. To show you why this is so important, I have an extreme example here where it's super unlevel. If we started off the print on the left here, all of the plastic would go down on the bed and it would be no problem. But as it moved over to the right, the nozzle would just be trying to print in the air, and it would cause a bunch of plastic to bunch up. It wouldn't be on the surface, and it would ruin your entire print. This will cause major issues if your bed is even a millimeter out of level. An unlevel bed will cause so many problems to where it's not even worth listing them. Make sure this is one of the first things you do when you get your printer. You can find plenty of videos on how to do this online, and there are 2 methods to do it depending on what type of printer you have. If your printer has a piece that looks something like this is called a probe. What this is gonna do is go down and detect exactly where the bed is so it knows that it's level. If you have one of these probes, again, just look up with the printer that you purchased how to level the bed using a probe. There's so much good documentation on it. These probes make things a little bit more easy and automated. The other way is manual leveling. Almost all printers will have these screws underneath the bed. There's a really easy process to do where you manually move the head of the printer around, and then you tighten and loosen these screws accordingly to get the bed perfectly level where it needs to be. Again, there are plenty of good guides on how to do this. It's super simple. Just know that it is one of the most important things you can be doing with a 3D printer. And if you don't do it, it's not going to work and you're going to hate it. I promise you, make sure you level your bed. The second important thing you understand is supports and how they work. So I'll show you what these are on the computer. Let's say we wanted to print this L-shaped object in this orientation. Remember, the printer prints in layers. So it would print these layers totally fine because it could stack on top of each other. But when the printer goes to print this piece, it would be, again, trying to print on absolutely nothing. And the plastic would just all droop down and it would result in a failed print. Now, this problem is super easy to solve. All you need to do is identify the cases where you need to solve it. The software does try to help you with this, where if you look at the underside of an object, it makes it bright red if it's an area that doesn't have any plastic to support it. Quite literally, all you have to do is go onto the right here in your slicer and click support and turn that on. This is gonna automatically generate support material so this can be printed. I'm just gonna print this out on my printer so you can see it. Even though we had it loaded up in the printer as just the L shape, it added this extra material here. And this material is built in such a way that it'll simply snap off the object. So when you knock that off, you have your final part. Support material is that easy to use, but if you forget to add it, you're gonna have a bad time. So that was a ton of info. What printer should you get? So I'll have both these recommendations linked in my bio there, but overall, by far, the best bang for your buck, best beginner printer, best value for anybody is the Ender 3 V3 SE. These are by far the most popular line of printers. There's so much community support out there. They work. This is essentially the same printer I have. This one does have the auto bed leveling sensor that we talked about, so that part of your life will be made a little bit easier. Conscious, the Ender 3 is 170. This is by far the most popular printer in the world. Again, this is very similar to the printer I have. The only real difference you'll notice is it doesn't have the bed leveling sensor we talked about, and you have to do it manually, but again, that's really not that big of a deal. For this price, this is an incredible machine. Those are the only 2 I really recommend. There are some higher end printers that some people like the Bamboo Labs ones. These ones are great because they don't really require you to do anything. They work out of the box, but I do not recommend these to a beginner because these are just gonna work and you're not gonna learn how to troubleshoot a printer because they just work out of the box. And when a problem does come up, you're not gonna know how to fix it. I think it's really important to know the nuances of how a 3D printer works and interact with all the different parts so you actually know how to tweak things, how to refine things. You're just gonna be better at the hobby and you're gonna enjoy it more. Important thing, you're going to see 3D printers that look like this when you're shopping around, and sometimes they can be pretty cheap. These are called resin printers or SLA printers. Do not even look at these, do not buy them, do not think about them. These printers use a different technology and they are very, very dangerous. They use resin that can be super toxic, you need proper ventilation, they could literally destroy your eyes. They're very, very dangerous and people do not give them enough credit for how dangerous they are. They're great printers when used properly, but they require so much care when using them, and again, people just do not give them the credit they need for how dangerous they are. Don't buy these as a beginner. That was such a long video. I hope it was helpful. Thank you for watching. Happy 3D printing.